again, that's because Max is working at 0 world position here and my models aren't at 0, so that's okay. It's easy for us to move it over. Now I want to make sure that my the width of my box here takes up the entire width of the door. So I'm going to go into my modify tab and increase my height a little bit. Move the back of the box to the back of the door. I'm just zooming right in here as close as I can to get a good match. You'll find when you zoom in too much, you're not going to be able to move your model because you're zoomed in way too close for Max to handle, which is fine. As long as we get it into position, it should be good. Zoom all the way back out again. Now we can adjust our height. And any fine adjustments we can make after the fact, so it's not a big deal. So that should be good. We've got our door, that box is covering most of the door now. So what I want to do here is jump into my front viewport. I'm going to turn on edged faces. Yeah, I'm going to turn on edged faces. I'm going to change my length and width segments for that box that I've just created. It's getting a little difficult for me to see what it's doing here because everything else is... oh, there we go. I want to do 3 length segments and 3 width segments. Alright, now I want to throw an edit poly down. I could convert my box to an edit poly, but I always prefer to throw an edit poly on top, and that way I can go back if I need to. I'm going to select one of our edges here, edge loops, and I'm going to no, I don't want ring. I'm going to loop it around. Move that edge loop over to the side. I'm going to do the same here with this other edge loop on the right hand side. Loop it again. Move it over. I'm going to do the same with this second loop and pull it up. And the last loop here, I'm going to pull down. Okay, now I'm going to go into face mode. Make sure I select the faces on both sides here of the box. So we've just selected, we moved our edge loops so that we could select the inner faces, and I'm going to delete them. Okay, now like I said, we can make our fine adjustments now, so I'm going to... I always do this. I move one of my viewports into orthographic, and I don't like that. So we're going to go back to the front view here. But I'm actually going to go into vertex mode. Select the verts on this side because it's a little bit too thick for the door jamb. Go into my scale tool. Zoom in a little bit. I'm just going to scale that in until we so we can fix that intersecting geometry there. Just like that. We'll rotate around our model, and it looks like we have the same problem here on the opposite side. We're a bit thick, so So again, we're going to select all of our verts now. We could do just the ones on this side. Let's try that. And use our move tool. And just move them in a little. I'm going to do the same on the front section. I think they're just a little bit too thick. So again, I'm going to select all the verts at the front, and I'm also just going to move them in. Just like that. And that's given us a frame around the outside edge of the door. All we have to do now is looks like we need to make it a little bit wider this way, just a touch. This corner's okay, but it's just a little short on this edge, so again, not a big deal. We can fix that up by going to vertex mode, selecting the verts on that edge, and we're just going to pull them out a little bit. Like that. Okay, so we've created a frame for our door so that when we open the door in the game engine, we'll have a nice textured sides and tops of the door itself. But we're not, we haven't assigned our UV map yet, or our texture, so we're going to do that now. What I'm going to do too is, I don't want to get any Z fighting happening when we bring this into Unreal. And by Z fighting, you see what I mean here. When I angle this a certain way, we're getting the background box showing through the object, like that. That's Z fighting. So basically what that means is if you've got two polygons too close together in a game engine, you're going to get flickering. You notice sometimes when you're playing a game, some of the objects in the background flicker. Like they'll flicker like you see happening here. Usually you'll notice with the texture, it'll look like texture flickering. It's not actually the texture flickering, it's generally Z fighting that's happening when that's going on in a game. And that usually happens because when the model was created, it's been, two polys have been put too close together. You'll notice it particularly in game engines like Bethesda's games, they tend to have a bit of a problem with it. And that's Z fighting. Now, so we don't want to have that problem in Unreal when we're working with it. Chances are it will be okay because Unreal handles Z depth a lot better than the engine that Bethesda use. But we can fix that by going into our vertex mode again, into our front viewport. And we're going to select those verts on the inside edge. So not the ones on the outside, just the 4 on the inside. Jump back into our top viewport. Get our scale tool. I'm just going to scale it in the Y. That's not going to affect our edge, which is really all we're concerned with. But it should help with our Z fighting. So let's rotate our model around. You see now we're not getting anywhere near the Z fighting we were getting before. And that's just to make sure that we don't have a problem with Z, with two polys being too close together. So we have to texture up our frame now, so let's select that inner box again, jump into our material editor. Come on, mate. Find the texture we're using for that door. I'm just going to select it here. There we go. And so it's this one here. I'm just going to assign the texture to the box we just created. It's not UV mapped though yet, so let's throw an unwrap UVW down. Open up our editor. make sure we check our texture on in the background here so we can see what we're doing. Hey Sniper Echo, good to see you. I'm doing really well, thank you. How are you? How's things going? How is you still doing any mocap work? You were talking about that a few weeks ago. You're doing some motion capture stuff. Is that still going on, or is that you're taking a break from that? And how is that great looking landscape coming? So I'm really keen to see some more work on that. It looks great. But as far as me, I'm well, thank you. A bit tired. I've got a bit of a backlog of work to do for the studio at the moment. So my weekend will be taken up doing that. You're still doing your motion cap? Cool. It's fun doing motion capture, I have to admit. I haven't done much of it myself. I've seen it done though when I've worked for the game studios in the past. And a lot of my friends are animators and they do a lot of motion capture stuff too. And I always enjoy watching the guys as they're doing their motion capture. You know, it's interesting it's not motion capture, but a lot of the animator friends that I have, when they have to animate a character, say, let's use an example with a game character that we were working on once for the game studio. They had to do a get up animation, and the get up animation is like the character's been shot and they fall down and they have to stand back up again. The character has to stand back up again. And I thought it was really interesting to see the way that they managed to get that animation right. What they did was they took a video camera, the animator filmed himself falling to the ground and getting back up again, pushing himself back up and standing up again. He took that video footage into Maya, because it was using, animators generally use Maya. He took the footage into Maya and then he used that to keyframe his animation as he was making it of the character falling down and getting back up again. So he could get all those subtle movements correct. Now, if you're doing motion capture, you don't have to worry about doing it, keyframing it by hand, because the software will do it. But I thought that was an interesting way to not use motion capture, but to use motion, if you know what I mean. So they didn't use motion capture, but they took the video motion and copied it as to get the movement correct in their animation. So just that's another way, because motion capture's gotten a lot cheaper now. It used to be very expensive. It's still not cheap though, and you still have to do cleanup on it. But if you don't have access to that type of tech, and you are an animator, that's the trick that they use all the time. They video themselves doing the motion of whatever they have to animate. This is characters we're talking about here. And then they take that video footage into their 3D program and they match their animation to the video footage. So keep that in mind, guys. If you're an animator or you want to do some animation work and you want to get some nice character movement, video yourself and use that as a reference in the background of your modeling program. The video footage as a background. And you can step through your timeline and follow the motion as you're moving your character to match the video. I thought that was pretty neat anyway. Maybe it's just me. But yeah, no, I thought that was a neat way to do it. I'm going to detach these polys from the top. So I'm going to go into tools and I'm going to break those polys. Because if I don't break it before I try and move it, I'm going to get stretching. They're going to be attached to the rest of it. And I'm going to move that up to the top. We're going to select the polys along the side here. We'll do the same thing. We'll go tool and break. We'll move that off to the side. And we'll do the one on the opposite side. Again, make sure you break it before you move it. And then the one along the bottom, which is a little difficult for us to see here. I'm just going to go into wireframe mode to make sure I have those polys selected. And I do, so that's good. Back into shaded. And again, I'm going to break those polys and move them down to the bottom. Everything else that's left is stuff that's hidden inside the door frame that I'm never going to see. So I can just shrink those down and place them on my texture map here, anywhere really. Anywhere with the green part of the texture. That should be good enough, because again, we're never going to see it's hidden behind inside the door frame. So then let's work with our outer edges now. So we have the top. Let's start at the top. Now again, I have to make sure that my UVs are rotated correctly here, and they are. I think the ones on the side need to be rotated, but the one at the top I think is fine. We need to shrink it to better match the actual shape of the object it's being UV mapped to, and at the moment it's a square, and we're working with a really long rectangle. So again, we want to hold down the shift key and scale it down so that we better match the piece of geometry it's being UV mapped to. Again, hold down the shift key and I'm going to drag that down into our texture map here. I'm going to scale it down a little bit more. Move it up a little bit. Again, I'm going to turn off my map seams here so I don't have those green lines in the way. And that should be good for what we want. Now we just have to worry about the ones on the side. And again, I think the ones on the side here are rotated incorrectly. They need to be rotated 90 degrees. Make sure my angle snap is turned on. We need to do both of those. We'll rotate them 90 degrees. And the one at the bottom, they should be fine. Yeah, motion capture is a lot of fun. I agree, Sniper Echo. He says he's worked on the landscape a nice bit since then, but you're still working on it. That's cool. Whenever you're ready to show it, let me know. You know, I'm always happy to look at your guys' work. So I don't want you showing it before you're ready to show it, though. I know what that's like. I don't like showing my work either until it's at a stage that I like, that I feel comfortable with. Now because we're not going to be taking this object into a 3D paint program, we can overlap our UVs here, and that's what I'm going to do here with the bottom section. I'm going to overlap it on the top piece just here. Make sure it is in my 0 to 1 space though. I don't want it to be outside of 0 to 1. And I'm just going to scale them in just a little bit. Again, because it looks like I'm just hanging outside of the 0 to 1 space. I don't want that to happen. I want to make sure I'm within my 0 to 1. So don't have any of your UVs outside like that. I'm just going to move it over a little bit. That should be good. Let's work on these two side pieces. Again, I'm going to non-uniformly scale by holding down the shift key, again to better match the geometry I'm UV mapping. And we're going to move this one over. Again, I'm not worrying about overlapping UVs here because I'm not 3D painting it. Sniper Echo has a link here, let's have a look. Again, that's John's character. It's very cool and very creepy. He was doing some texturing work on it last night. So let's have a look at some work from Galen. Sorry, from Sniper Echo. My apologies, Sniper Echo. I've got Galen on the mind at the moment because I haven't seen him streaming for a while. I hope he's okay. Let's have a look at the second link as well before we analyze the image. Very nice. So you're actually in the landscape now, and he's used Sniper Echo is using the Unreal Engine here to. He's making a game, I think. Sorry, G. My apologies. I really, that was just a slip of the tongue. So like I said, he's on my mind a little bit. So last time I spoke to him, he was having migraines, and a friend of his died. So I hope he's okay. Very nice. It's looking really cool. And Sniper Echo is using the Unreal Engine 4 here to do some landscaping here at the moment. It's still a dark render. It's not too dark. It's not as dark as the first one I looked at. So I wouldn't say it's too dark. It is dark, but it's a very overcast sky. You're not going to get a lot of light. And it doesn't look too dark on my screen. It maybe looks a bit darker, like I said, because I've noticed my Twitch streams look a little darker than what I see on my monitor. And on my monitor it looks fine. I wouldn't say it was too dark. Yeah, no, not really. This is darker, but it's obviously looking into this corner of the shadow, so. But the texture work for the rocks looks really great. Really nice. I like the detailing you've got molded into the rock as well. So Sniper Echo has actually added a bit of detailing, it looks like, in the mesh. It's not just like round blobs. I see a lot of guys when they're doing landscaping work, and if they're using Unreal, say, and you use Unreal's push and pull tool, you know, to manipulate your geometry, it tends to make these really rounded blobs everywhere. And that doesn't look natural, guys. You always want to make sure you get this nice, particularly for rock, variation happening in the mesh, so it's not like a rounded rock. It looks jagged, put it that way. And you can do that in Unreal, it's just a bit more fiddling. When I come to create an environment for the Art Deco building that I'm doing in Unreal, I'm going to use a height map, I think, to get that look. So I'll do my sculpting in View, I'll get View to render out a height map, I'll take that height map into Unreal, and I'll use Unreal's landscape tool, landscape generation, to mold my landscape. I could export a mesh, as Sniper Echo has here. He created the mesh, I think he said, in Blender, and exported that into Unreal as a mesh landscape. That's perfectly a good way to do it. Or you can use Unreal's landscape tool itself, which is probably what I'll do, and use a height map. Just because, again, for the game engine, it's going to be less taxing for the game to use the built-in landscapes, the built-in landscape tool creation, as opposed to using a really large mesh. Not that a mesh is a bad way to go, and providing your mesh isn't too huge or too high poly, it'll be fine. But using Unreal's built-in landscapes, you can have very large landscapes with very little performance hit. So we'll probably, even though I'm only going to be creating a very small landscape, just big enough to create like an area for that Art Deco building, so I could probably get away with using a mesh. I think using the actual Unreal landscape tool, or landscapes themselves, would be more beneficial for you guys, because I'll use a part of the engine that's a little bit different from the rest of it. Like, a lot of people will use a mesh, but I'll use a landscape tool, I think. Look, I reserve the right to change my mind at any time, but at this stage I'm thinking about using their built-in landscape tool, because again, I want to see how they've improved it, what they've done to it, and whenever you can, like I said, it's best to use the landscape tool, because if you're making a game anyway, and a very large landscape for your game, you're going to have less of a performance hit using their landscape tool as opposed to importing a mesh. Not that importing a mesh is bad, it's not. It's just different way to do it. But no, I don't think it's dark. I like the texturing work, I like the detail you've got on the rocks themselves. These look pretty cool in the background here too, these ridges, mountain ridges you've got going on. And that's looking very nice, Sniper Echo, it really is. It'd be cool, it must be cool running around with a gun in it. I know that I always get a real kick when I haven't worked with the game engine for a while, like I said, because I do ArchViz now, so I do a lot of rendering in V-Ray and in View, so I don't tend to have a lot of time to play with my game stuff anymore. But I always get a kick out of it, and I always used to get a kick out of when I created a game, part of the game level, when I worked for game studios, of being able to jump into it and run around and what you've created, because I really like that instant feedback you get from being able to look at what you want, where you want, when you want, as opposed to having a rendered still image or even a rendered animation. You're on rails in a rendered animation. And I really like that real-time feedback you can get by using a game engine where you can run around and look at everything you've created in real time. That's always, I always get a real buzz out of that. That's really cool. I love doing that. And so I said it must be really very cool to run around in this landscape you've made. That's one of the things I really love about game engine and doing games work. That real-time feedback you get. And now the engines are getting so good as far as lighting and texturing and stuff goes. Pretty soon, I'd be worried if I was a rendering company like V-Ray or Maxwell or Mental Ray, because real-time engines are getting very good now. Really good. There'll come a time. I know that, oh, sorry Sniper Echo, I don't know why Nightbot did that. My apologies Sniper Echo, Nightbot can be a real nasty little thing at times, as you know. I've had problems with Nightbot before. I'll look at that caps thing. It must be a setting I've not turned off yet in Nightbot that times people out for caps. No, that's not your fault at all. It's Nightbot. Nightbot is being a nasty little bot. There's a setting in there that obviously I have not turned off yet, that where Nightbot will time you out if you caps type. I'll look at it after the stream though. My apologies. It's not your fault. Please don't think it's your fault. It's Nightbot's fault, and I'll look into fixing that after the stream. But until I do that though, don't type all in caps. Just so Nightbot doesn't time you out. But what did you? I can see what you're typing anyway. Yeah, you said it's pretty cool. It is. It's very cool. Your keyboard messed up. You think? No problem. I will look at it in Nightbot though. But I do know that there is a setting in there where if you type all in caps, he'll time you out. Oh, you converted the mesh to a height map? Oh, cool. Oh, and you use that in Unreal Engine 4? Cool. That's the way to go. Not that there's anything wrong with using a mesh in Unreal as your landscape, but you can really only do that with smaller landscapes. Because if you import a mesh that's too large, you're going to have to go really high poly to get the detail you want in the geometry, and that's going to really start to slow down the game engine when you're making a game and running around in it, particularly when you start adding other stuff in the landscape. And that's why Epic made that landscape, I don't want to call it a mesh, but that landscape tool, because it's very light on the system for the game engine. So whenever you can, it's always better to try and use their built-in landscape generator than bring in a mesh. And a height map is the way to go. That's probably, like I said, the way I'll be creating the landscape for that Art Deco building as well. I will bring in a height map that up from a sculpt that I've done in view of a piece of land, and we'll create it in Unreal using their landscape tool, using a height map. Yeah, convert the mesh to a height map is the way to go. So Sniper Echo says he converted the mesh to a height map and he used that in Unreal Engine 4. That's certainly the way to do it, because it'll be the lightest on system resources for your game if you're making a game. So it's definitely the way you want to do it. But it's looking very nice. Like I said, I really like the texture work you've done on the rocks, and the ground looks good too. Yeah, it is. Sniper Echo says that's why he did the height map way, because it is handled differently in Unreal. That's the reason, like I said, that Epic made that that landscape editor in Unreal, so that you could use their landscape generator, because it's lighter on the system resources in the game than using a large mesh. So whenever possible, do try to use the built-in landscape tool in Unreal. but it is looking very nice. Like I said, I like the texturing work. I like the blend you've got going between the rock and the dirt. Through here, it's all looking very nice. Yeah, no, it's looking great. And I do. I like these ridges, mountainy ridges you've got going in the background as well. Some nice detailing happening in there, and nice detailing in the rock as well. And I love the sky. I really like the overcast sky. It looks great. Looks very nice. Yeah, no, it's looking really good. Really good. No problem. Just before we continue on with finishing this door up, I'm going to take a quick break for a couple of minutes, guys. I want to grab a fresh cup of coffee. This one's gone cold. I'll be back in just a few minutes. I'll leave you with my Be Right Back screen. Hopefully the audio won't stutter. It didn't stutter yesterday. It did stutter last week. OBS, I don't know. Hopefully it won't stutter though. So I'll be back in just a few minutes, guys. Okay. All copied up now, so that's good. But yeah, again, Sniper Echo, the work looks great. Really good. You going to add any vegetation anywhere, or are you just going to keep it as like a deserty type environment? But it's looking very nice. Okay, so we've moved our UVs in here for the one on the side. Again, you see that my UVs are outside of 0 to 1. I want to make sure we don't do that, so we're going to scale it back. Again, by hold down the shift key and just in one direction, not the band. Let's do the same for this one on the other side. We're going to scale it in. Oh, not that much. And we'll move it over. And again, I'm going to scale it back just a bit, so I stay within my 0 to 1. Alright, now we should be good. And we are. We have our texture happening on the side here. And that looks good. We have our depth information happening on in the texture, actually in the geometry of the door on the front and on the back. So that looks good. All we have to do now is attach the box to the rest of the geometry. So I always do this, like I said, guys. I'm trying to select a second object and I can't because I'm still in UV unwrap mode. I'm going to make sure I exit that. I make that mistake all the time, as you guys will know, can attest to. I'm going to attach that second box we created to the rest of the mesh. I'm going to turn off edged bases here. Now we're going to end our isolation mode so we can see all of the mesh again, and I'm going to again select it all and go back into isolation mode. Double check that everything is, again, I'm not going to UV map these side pieces of the actual frame because they're not going to be seen when we put it inside the building. The brickwork goes right up to the edges, so there's no point really in mapping that up. I'm just looking at my side parts here. It looks to me like we have to move the back section of the frame in closer to the door to hide that, to better match the door in the background. So I'm just going to select our frame. Make sure I have the right pieces selected. have forgotten anything. I think we're good. And I'm going to move it in until the front edge here touches the door. Should be okay, I think. Maybe I might move it back just a little bit more, because there's still a slight gap just up here. I think we're good there. I don't see any gaps happening anywhere, which is good. Okay. Let's move our door handle back to the door. So we have our handle at the front, our handle at the back, our door frame and our door. Let's attach the door handles to the door itself. So the one at the front and the one at the back. And we're going to call this one front door. And we'll call this one front door frame. Okay, let's look at our axis position now. I'm going to go into my hierarchy tab. I'm going to effect pivot and center it to the object. Now I can either choose to place a pivot to the bottom or to the top. I think I'll place a pivot at the top. It'll be easier for me to position it in the game engine if it's at the top. So again, I'm just going to move. I'm just going to make sure effect pivot is still turned on and move my pivot up to the top here. Okay, let's select our door. And again, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to center our pivot to the middle of the object, but for this one I'm going to move the pivot to the edge over here to simulate where a hinge would be. Okay, so we have our pivots correct. All I want to do now is I want to throw down a reset X form. Where are we? On the door and also on the frame. Collapse my stack on both of those objects.